In a small village, a severe epidemic and prolonged drought were taking place. This terrifying story happened to a young man named Jiro. That day, while washing clothes inside his house, he suddenly heard a strange noise coming from outside the door. Looking around, Jiro thought it was probably another beggar. However, when he glanced to one side, he discovered a beautiful girl who was injured. How strange! Could such an extremely beautiful girl really appear in his quiet little village? Jiro was flustered by the girl's appearance. She had a large wound on her leg, and Jiro guessed that she might have just escaped from bandits down the mountain. Jiro quickly asked the girl if she was all right. The girl didn't say anything, only making faint sounds with her mouth. Jiro continued asking for more information about the girl, but she remained silent, which made him feel uneasy. Jiro then asked if she came from the neighboring village. Currently, the epidemic was rampant and the nearby village was hit hardest. Perhaps this was why the survivors had to migrate everywhere. But strangely, the girl continued crying and only let out very faint sounds. At this point, Jiro realized the issue. This girl was mute. On the other hand, he also felt concerned that the disease might spread to him, so he was quite hesitant. However, Jiro calmly considered the situation. Although the neighboring village had an outbreak, all those infected had already died. Since this girl was unharmed, she must be immune to the disease. So, without overthinking, Jiro approached and consoled the girl, promising to help bandage her wounds and then take her home. The girl was moved by Jiro's kindness. She never expected to meet such a good-hearted young man during these chaotic times. After bringing the girl into the house, Jiro treated her wound and carefully bandaged it. Because the injury was quite serious, he advised her to stay for a day to recover. He promised to find a way to take her back to her village the next day. Although the girl couldn't speak, she still understood Jiro's words and appeared delighted. Moved by Jiro's kindness, the girl fell head over heels for him. She was truly smitten by this handsome young man. While helping the girl onto the bed to rest, Jiro felt something strange. Her hands, though soft, were icy cold. Jiro also felt an intense itch at the back of his neck. He kept scratching, and soon sweat poured down his body, chilling him to the bone. At some point, raised itchy bumps had appeared on the back of Jiro's neck. His mind suddenly clouded and Jiro became frightened, screaming loudly. He felt his body alternating between hot and cold. Suddenly, something behind him caused Jiro to panic. It was horrifying. Behind him appeared giant mosquitoes with grotesque shapes. Small mosquitoes emerged from everywhere, surrounding Jiro. Their buzzing filled his ears, leaving him utterly terrified. Even worse, one mosquito flew straight toward Jiro's eye. His body froze, unable to move. The mosquito extended its proboscis toward Jiro's pupil, preparing to pierce and suck blood right from his eye. After a sharp scream, Jiro woke up. It turned out everything was just a nightmare. Standing before Jiro was the girl he had saved. She only made strange sounds and looked at him affectionately. However, the girl's actions were very odd. She leaned close to Jiro's body, but he quickly stopped her. At this moment, Jiro noticed strange swellings all over his body. He easily recognized them as mosquito bites. The girl quickly brought a bowl of hot soup to Jiro. Feeling awkward, Jiro could only ask what had happened. From the moment he helped the girl into the house, he remembered nothing. The girl now appeared shy and began feeding him porridge. Suddenly, Jiro realized something. He felt his entire body becoming strong again. It turned out that she was the one who had saved him from the deadly illness he had been suffering from. While he was unconscious, the girl had treated him. Though she didn't understand Jiro's words, She knew he was expressing friendly feelings toward her, which made her feel bashful and shy. Jiro shyly patted her head to comfort her, saying she could stay here temporarily. Once she recovered fully, he would help her find her family. After 7 days together, they developed feelings for each other and decided to get married. A small wedding was quickly arranged. There were no guests or elaborate feasts, just a table covered with a red cloth, a candle, and 2 celebratory glasses of wine. That night, they officially became husband and wife. Unbeknownst to them, at the same time, a mysterious figure appeared in the village. A wandering monk arrived, carrying a dead, yellow-furred fox on his back. The monk gave a sinister smile. He had traced the terrible demon responsible for causing this epidemic. That morning, snow fell heavily. After the drought, winter had come early and dragged on, making life increasingly difficult in the village. In a corner of the yard, Jiro was in pain, vomiting a lot of blood. His old illness had returned and worsened. Jiro thought the cold weather had triggered his pneumonia, but upon reconsideration, Jiro realized the symptoms were more similar to this epidemic. Could it be that he had contracted the virus? Just then, the voice of the monk rang out, declaring that Jiro was indeed infected. The sudden appearance of the man startled Jiro. He turned around and asked who the man was. The monk introduced himself as a demon-hunting sorcerer. He was chasing a demon that had caused the epidemic. After their battle, the demon had been severely injured. Then, the monk pulled out the yellow-furred fox hanging by his side. Jiro was curious, not understanding what the monk was doing. But just seconds later, Jiro became terrified, as if he had seen these signs somewhere before. It was horrifying. Blisters covered the fox's body, unmistakably mosquito bites. These swarms of mosquitoes had spread the disease. Jiro asked the monk if the fox was infected and related to the demon. The monk began recounting the story. The demon was a 1,000-year-old mosquito spirit. In her very spirit, it was an expert in the art of committing murder. Wherever it went, it spread disease. Its method was horrifying. It laid eggs inside its host. A month ago, the monk had found the demon in town and waged a 3-day battle against it. This mosquito spirit had transformed into an extremely beautiful girl. Wherever she went, millions of infected mosquitoes followed, ravaging villages and spreading the disease. At every place they visited, they laid eggs on the hosts. Initially, the hosts would feel healthy, but eventually they would become weak and sickly. Hearing this, Jiro suspected something. Pointing to the fox, he asked the monk, "Are those mosquito bites on the yellow-furred fox where the demon laid its eggs?" The monk didn't deny it and agreed that Jiro's hypothesis was close to his own thoughts. However, the yellow-furred fox had died before the eggs hatched. The monk wanted to destroy the demon to uncover the root cause of the epidemic. The monk had a terrifying hypothesis. This demon used humans to nurture its eggs. The monk even teased Jiro, asking if he had been bewitched by the demon. If so, then he would become pregnant and give birth to a bunch of offspring. The monk's taunts made Jiro feel fearful. At the same time, the monk suddenly pressed hard on Jiro's shoulder with one hand. Jiro was astonished as, in that moment, he saw something horrifying. Jiro could no longer believe his eyes. A vision appeared before him, showing him what the monk had faced. It was an image of the female demon with killer eyes. She had fought the monk and suffered a wound on her thigh inflicted by him. That battle had been grueling for the monk to injure the demon, but it had managed to escape all the way to this village. After seeing these images, Jiro became extremely frightened. Everything seemed blurry in his mind. The monk used his powers to show Jiro clearer images of the demon, proving that he suspected Jiro. Jiro now felt confused. He couldn't believe his eyes or the images he had just seen. Could it be that this was his wife? After showing Jiro those images, the monk raised his hand and asked whether Jiro had ever encountered this demon. However, Jiro replied that he had never met it before. He even told the monk that if he had, he probably wouldn't still be standing here. At this point, Jiro's body suddenly became heavy and weary. He said that he would inform the monk if he ever saw the demon. Hearing Jiro's words, the monk looked disappointed. He knew that Jiro was hiding something and repeatedly warned him to be careful when the blood moon appeared in the sky. Seeing that the monk still didn't trust him, Jiro insisted once more. He said that there was an old house at the end of the village where the monk could stay temporarily. With that, the monk bid farewell to Jiro, saying he would stay there for a few days. If he searched the entire village and still couldn't find the demon, he would move on to the next village. However, he still advised Jiro to be cautious, as demons were very seductive and manipulative. Jiro mustered the last bit of strength to reassure the monk. Afterwards, he felt dizzy and lightheaded. Everything seemed to darken. That night, the atmosphere was quiet, and a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. A blood moon, signaling that something terrifying was about to happen. Jiro woke up, feeling overwhelmed by fatigue. When he opened his eyes, he vaguely saw someone lying on his stomach. It was his wife. He could feel her weight clearly, but his whole body couldn't move. Then he gradually fell back asleep, the feeling of exhaustion creeping over his entire body again. Suddenly, Jiro jolted awake. Everything felt like a dream to him. After pondering for a while, he wondered if meeting the monk had all been just a dream. However, when he looked down at his chest, the mosquito bites were still there. Jiro grew fearful. Was everything just a dream, or was it real? Who exactly was his wife? Jiro sat up abruptly. He felt that his body was still healthy, with no signs of his previous illness returning. Thus, Jiro concluded that everything had just been a dream. At that moment, when he looked over at his sleeping wife, Jiro thought he saw something. There were strange bloody marks on his wife's chest. Jiro feared that his wife had also been bitten by mosquitoes like him. But why were the mosquito bites bleeding? Immediately, Jiro reached out to touch the bloodstains on his wife's body. But strangely, nothing happened. So, where did the blood come from? At this point, many questions began to arise in Jiro's mind. In his daze, he recalled seeing his wife lying on his chest. Could it have been his own blood? Remembering the dream where he saw the yellow-furred fox covered in swollen mosquito bites, Jiro thought of a terrifying possibility. Could countless mosquito eggs have been parasitically laid inside him by the demon? The more Jiro thought about it, the more frightened he became. This nightmare wasn't without reason. The mysterious appearance of his wife and the bite marks on his chest only deepened his suspicions. Afterward, Jiro lay back down to sleep and wait. If the dream was true, then his wife was indeed the demon. And tonight, the blood moon had appeared. It was time for the demon to reveal its true form. While lying there lost in thought, his wife suddenly woke up. The girl didn't understand why she was drenched in sweat. Jiro heard his wife moaning clearly. It seemed like she was having a nightmare or experiencing some kind of intense pain. Suddenly, his wife turned to wake Jiro up. She even said that she knew he was still awake and wanted him to witness this scene. With that, the wife stepped down from the bed. She glanced back at Jiro, who was pretending to sleep with his eyes closed, then slowly began removing her clothes. Jiro was terrified, tightly shutting his eyes. He didn't want to see what he was imagining. He hoped this was just a nightmare. However, a faint pink mist gradually enveloped the room and Jiro could smell the stench of blood. His wife leaned down and said to Jiro, "It's time for you to know this secret, and you must witness this incredible sight." In his haze, Jiro slightly opened his eyes to look. His wife's eyes had turned pitch black and her face began to crack open. From within, a monster tore through and emerged. Jiro was now utterly horrified. Those were huge eyes, and unmistakably the head of a giant mosquito slowly peeled away from his wife's body. Sharp claws sprouted from its hands. The demon appeared to be in pain, as if something inside it was resisting. Before Jiro's eyes now stood the demon, with a human body and the head of a mosquito, with wings sprouting from its back. Jiro could only scream, using all his strength to struggle. Strangely, the demon just stood there wailing. Jiro kicked it hard in the chest. The kick sent the demon crashing into the wall. A thick black smoke appeared and only strange cries could be heard. The dense black smoke filled the room, and even Jiro couldn't understand why the demon had become so weak. In an instant, his wife's face reappeared. The girl looked sorrowful, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jiro grabbed a wooden stick from the corner of the room and screamed, preparing to attack the demon. However, just as he raised the stick, what happened next made him stop. The demon had returned to the gentle form of his wife, but she was dead. Jiro was now both terrified and heartbroken. He didn't know how to face the situation. Clearly, she was both a demon and his wife. Perhaps to prevent her demonic nature from harming her husband, the girl had tried to use her strength to suppress the rising beast within her. Faced with this situation, Jiro suddenly remembered the scene from his dream, the location he had pointed out to the monk. Jiro quickly ran to the abandoned house at the end of the village. Now, only the monk could provide him with the most accurate answers about all of this. As soon as he entered the house, Jiro begged the monk to save his wife, as he still believed that his wife's body had merely been possessed by the demon. After making a hand seal, the monk became aware of the situation. He told Jiro to lead the way quickly. Jiro quickly led the monk back to his house. As soon as they opened the door, the stench of blood hit them strongly. Inside Jiro's house, his wife was gone, replaced by a giant mosquito lying dead. The monk said that he never expected this demon to meet such an end. He had long known that Jiro was being bewitched by this demon. He had entered Jiro's dreams to warn him about the demon. He also said that Jiro was very lucky. This demon seemed to have been softened by Jiro. When the blood moon appeared, the monster should have awakened and killed Jiro. But unexpectedly, the demon had used its own body to protect Jiro. As he spoke, the monk examined the giant mosquito's corpse and was suddenly surprised because the truth was not as he had thought. Jiro's wife was not a demon. Her body had been stolen by the mosquito demon. Hearing this, Jiro felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The monk also revealed to Jiro that the girl had been fighting against the demon to protect him. Every day his wife cared for Jiro, and at night she used her proboscis to suck out the poisoned blood and treat the illness caused by the virus that the mosquito demon had spread throughout the village. She had made a pact with the demon so she could stay by Jiro's side forever. However, everything had fallen apart due to Jiro's suspicions and, above all, because of the monk, who had cast the spell to summon the blood moon. At this moment, the monk felt deep regret In a careless moment, he had endangered a human life. After hearing the monk's words, Jiro became heartbroken. His wife's love for him was real. Though she couldn't speak, she must have endured so much pain. Jiro felt like his whole world was collapsing. He had doubted his wife's feelings. Suddenly, Jiro's entire body began to tremble violently, and blood spurted from his mouth. The disease within Jiro had flared up. The monk grew fearful because if it wasn't stopped, the parasites inside Jiro would take over his body completely. The monk began casting a spell. He couldn't let the girl's sacrifice be in vain. At this point, Jiro writhed in agony, feeling as if thousands of worms were gnawing through his body from the inside. The more he thought about it, the more bitter the monk felt. That girl had sacrificed herself to heal Jiro, but due to his wrong judgment, he had misunderstood her. After the waves of pain subsided, the bumps on Jiro's body began to spread even further. They reached his neck, causing Jiro immense pain, and he screamed in despair. The monk patiently waited for the right moment. The larvae gradually spread toward Jiro's brain, beginning to invade his entire body. The monk muttered something under his breath and then focused his energy. Suddenly, he drew the sword strapped to his back. Could it be that the only solution was to destroy Jiro? Only by eliminating the host could the epidemic be stopped. But no, the monk turned the sword toward himself. Since he was immune to the disease, this was the most effective solution he could think of at the moment. In the silent space, the monk cut his hand to draw his blood. Then he dripped his blood into Jiro's mouth. By now, it was clear that the virus was about to reach Jiro's brain. Jiro appeared to be in excruciating pain, clutching tightly onto the monk's hand. The monk continuously reassured him. A few seconds later, the monk suddenly shouted a series of incomprehensible words. Jiro's eyes turned blank, and his whole body trembled violently. Blood spurted from the monk's mouth as he used his magic to destroy the terrifying larvae of the Mosquito demon. Jiro eventually recovered, and he erected a tombstone for his late wife. He lived with a constant sense of guilt and longing. Perhaps for the rest of his life, he would live in regret. Suddenly, at that moment, a mosquito flew and landed on the tombstone of his wife. It carried a message to Jiro. His wife would always be by his side, and whenever he saw a mosquito, he would see her.